My creative outlets were where I could escape from all of the heavy tension that I felt in my household. It was my coping mechanism, my thing that allowed me to feel like myself and find myself when my home life was really dark and scary. Hello and welcome to the Bianca Taylor podcast. I am so excited to re-release my podcast, formerly known as Badass Babe Radio, where I was having conversations around mental health, feminism, veganism, and overall wellness. And I wanted to continue that, but we're rebranding. There's been so much that's changed since I think 2018 was the last time I released an episode. And I'm really excited to just share updates about my life, everything from having an explant to starting new businesses, going through a breakup, getting back together. My life has really just done a full roller coaster and I've experienced so much growth. So I'm really excited to have this podcast and have conversations with amazing people about topics that are a little bit taboo, conscious, eye-opening, and exciting. So today I have a guest who is going to be interviewing me and helping me share my story here. You may already know him. He has a podcast as well. He is my partner. He is my lover. He is an entrepreneur. He is a health coach, Mr. Nimai Delgado.
I don't think you've ever called me Mr. Nimai Delgado. That's really good. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for your new show. Obviously, you've been through so much change and new developments over the past couple of years since your last episode. So this is a great reintroduction to your audience, to your listeners, and a great opportunity for them to understand who is this version of Bianca Taylor.
Yes, I'm super excited to share my story, and it's perfect to have you interview me because you're great at interviewing. You've been podcasting longer than me, and of course, we're super comfortable here, so I feel safe in this container here. So, yeah, I'm excited. Let's just jump in.
Just jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just treat this as a brand new conversation. So for anybody that might be their first exposure to you and who you are, let's just start right from the beginning, because you've had a very powerful story in childhood, and to my knowledge, you haven't really shared as much about it publicly. And I think there was a number of reasons behind why you would want to keep your childhood safe and process and unpack that. But I feel that with all the work that you've been doing, you're probably at a better place to share that with the world. So let's get right in. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, let's just start from the beginning. And I think starting from the beginning also gives so much insight to what people see from me online. So starting from the beginning, I was born in New Jersey. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and my family is half Cuban, half Colombian, 100% loud. And I had a really interesting childhood from the beginning, and something that a lot of people don't know about my childhood experience is that when I was 12 years old, my dad was shot and paralyzed. And that was such a turning point for my life, to experience that big of a trauma so young and at an age where I was old enough to understand the depth of what was going on, but also not old enough to understand how to process it, how to handle it. I felt like I needed to be there to support my parents through this really crazy traumatic time. I am a middle child, so I have an older sister and a younger brother. My sister was at college at the time, and my brother was still just a little kid. So I really assumed that role of, I want to be a caretaker, I want to help, and I don't know how to. And I think that a lot of people have experienced that as children, assuming the role of something is wrong with mom or dad. I need to help them. I don't know how to help them. I start to feel a lot of guilt. And that was a huge part of my developmental phase, was going through that
Hmm.
experience.
Wow. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about what that day was like for you and what was going through your head whenever you got the news?
Yeah, so I remember it perfectly. I slept over my best friend's house. I was in middle school. And when I woke up in the morning, we were supposed to go to the mall. I was really excited about it. And my friend's mom came in the room and she gave me the phone, and my mom was on the phone, and she just said, "You have to come straight to the hospital. Dad was in an accident." And I immediately assumed car accident, right? When somebody says, "Oh, mom or dad was in an accident," you assume it must have been a car accident. So I had no idea. I thought, okay, well, he's okay. He's at the hospital, so he's alive. So that's good. And I just remember, being in the car on the way to the hospital, listening to Fall Out Boy, looking at my Converse, and thinking, this is probably not as big of a deal as I think it is. And when I got there, my dad was in the ICU. He had, uh, like a tube down his throat. He couldn't talk. And he was essentially jumped, and they beat the shit out of him. I mean, he was all bruised up. And to see my dad, my masculine protector, in such critical condition, I mean, I was just completely confused. My mom was grieving because from that moment forward, my dad was never going to be the same person that he had been. I mean, we're always constantly changing. We're on this constant evolution of being a human. But when you take somebody's legs away, so he became a paraplegic, so he can't walk, but he has movement and use of his upper body. When you take somebody's legs away, I mean, that changes everything. He was an athlete. He worked for FedEx. He was a delivery man. He was a very active person. He was always fixing things around the house, doing gardening, and that aspect of him that we knew it was gone that day. And so I didn't understand all of that in the moment, but I just remember seeing my dad in critical condition, my mom in this emotional critical condition, and just thinking, what's happening to my life? Will anything ever be the same again? And from that point, the next 2 weeks of my life were a complete blur. Like, that part of my life was a blur. I didn't black out because of trauma, but I was in a complete fog. I remember staying at my uncle's house. I missed school for 2 weeks. I remember just sleeping an excessive amount because I didn't know this at the time, but I was processing trauma. I had no idea, like, why am I so tired? I was sleeping all the time. I was missing school. And when I finally returned to school, I remember just not knowing how to act, and everybody saying, "Oh, I heard your dad got shot. What happened? Was he a policeman?" And I was like, "No," like, and the truth is that the situation that happened with my dad, I wasn't really allowed to talk about. So that made it even more confusing for me as a kid. I wasn't allowed to talk about it with my friends at school. So I was just like, yeah, my dad got shot. I can't explain why. I don't know why it happened. I don't know what's happening to my life. And I mean, my dad was in the ICU for a really long time. He didn't come home for a while.
Hmm. Yeah, that's wow.
I know,
Even
like
just
starting
talking
off this
about it.
episode like so intense.
Yeah, well, I think it gives great context to who you are and what kind of strength that you have to be such a young girl to have gone through that experience and come out the other side with these circumstances that you had to adapt and learn to survive, learn to fend for yourself. Your family had essentially just fell apart. Your home life had completely fell apart. And I know just because we've talked about it in so many different ways, but I can't even begin to imagine what that pressure or what that felt like at that age as a 13 year old. I mean, that's such a developmental year for a young woman like you. So to have to go through that and just keep living and keep going on, that requires a lot of strength. So as you embarked on this new trajectory of your life with your family, what were some of the things what was going on? How did you end up coping with that and moving forward?
Yeah, so For me, I always coped with having different outlets of artistic expression. So for me, I would turn to painting, I would turn to drawing, and then when I started high school, I got into theater, and I was also dancing at the time, so I would go to dance, I would go to theater, I would spend time painting, anything that was creative. My creative outlets were where I could escape from all of the heavy, heavy tension that I felt in my household, and I'm sure that people watching or listening to this can relate to having gone through a traumatic experience in their youth and finding that thing that is your saving coping mechanism, whether it's a sport or a group of friends. And for some people like myself, I was very, very lucky that my coping mechanism was a healthy one, because I could have definitely gone the other route and tried to escape with drugs and alcohol or hanging out with the wrong types of kids. And luckily, my theater professor, he was like a father figure, honestly, throughout that time in my life as well. And he knew what I had experienced, and he was just so strict about, you know, do not drink alcohol, like do not do drugs. And he created so much discipline in my life. And that discipline, I can honestly say, contributed to me being able to become this entrepreneur and go on to do all of these things, because I learned that if you work hard towards something, if you have a vision, you can make it come to life. And I learned that in my theater program. And he had a really protective essence in my life at that time. And that, for me, like I said, I feel really blessed and really grateful for that experience. And it also allowed me to start to tap into my creative expression more and more, because I was a shy kid. So when I first started doing theater, I only danced. I was like, I'm only going to dance, put me with the dancers. I don't want to act, I don't want to sing. And then by my second year, I was like, okay, you know what? I'll audition for an acting role. And then by my senior year, I was comfortable singing. And that's how I've continued to grow that confidence in my self-expression. It's been years of work, and it started then. And it was my coping mechanism, my thing that allowed me to feel like myself and find myself when my home life was really dark and scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can. If anyone knows Bianca, when you first meet her, she can be perceived as shy, or maybe more to herself, or maybe more of an introvert, but she communicates in different ways. And once you see her dance, that is her form of expression. It's her form of communicating. And you're like, oh, now I get her. Like, now I
Yeah.
understand her. And I remember whenever we first met, and I mean, you were never really shy with me, but I just remember seeing you in those situations where you're a little bit shyer, and then the music comes on and you're just this completely other person, and you're so confident. And not that you're not confident, but it just shines a lot more. So it's very evident how leaning on something like dance early on in those formative years where you were struggling really helped you communicate with others.
Yeah, it was definitely a way for me to move all of the static energy through my body when I would be at home. I was, even though that situation happened when I was 12 going on 13, the aftermath of it was, I mean, years up into my 20s, to be honest. And so I would go home and just feel the tension of my mom's stress and my dad's depression. I mean, who wouldn't fall into a deep depression after losing their ability to walk? And that was really starting to affect me. So when I realized that dance was a place where I could go, I could tap into the music, I could be present in my body and go into a flow state, it was extremely healing for me. And I'm so glad that I found it. And I continue to, anytime I've drifted away from dance, I always come back to it. I always find my way back to it. And it has become the way that I communicate. And all the time I meet people, and then we have a party or a situation where there's dancing involved, and then after I dance with them, they're like, I understand you now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, dancing is my language. I dance better than I can talk to somebody first upon meeting them. And that's why I share it so much on Instagram and YouTube and all the different forms of dancing, pole dancing, twerking, but I also love to dance contemporary and hip hop because I want to inspire people to just try it and just tap into it as well, because it's been such a healing savior thing for me that I want other people to try it as well, because it can be that for anybody.
I mean, it was for me whenever we first met. I was very insecure about dancing. I was very stiff. I didn't want to be perceived as a bad dancer or just look goofy where somebody would make fun of me for dancing. And it really wasn't until we met and you really brought me out of my own shell. And I have so much fun when we dance together. It's one of my favorite
Me too.
pastimes of our relationship are these memories of us dancing in different places and different times and parties and festivals and all these other things. But it's such a cool metaphor for, not judging a book by its cover, thinking that you understand somebody based off of, a first impression. And sometimes the way that people communicate are just different. And yours really comes out whenever you dance. But that also translates to what you see on social media. People can have an assumption about you. People can think that they know you based off of one interaction or a picture or one video. So I think that since we've known each other, I mean, we can get into that, but your whole persona online since we first met, where I followed you in when 2000, it must have been 2016,
Yeah,
17, somewhere around
2016
there.
or something.
And at that time, there were not many vegan fitness influencers on Instagram, and you happened to be one of them. And we followed each other. And since then, you've accumulated over 1 million followers, and the types of content that you've put out has changed. You've evolved as a person. And before we get into all of that, I do want to just start with your journey into fitness, because I also think that's a really fascinating story, because you are known as a vegan fitness advocate and a trainer, but you didn't start out that way.
No, and the transition from dance to fitness was my personal transition from having this thing that was my where I felt safe, where I felt happy, was dancing and performing. And at the same time, I battled with so much self-worth issues and not feeling good enough, feeling inadequate, not feeling fully confident in myself from a young age. And of course, a lot of that was impacted on my childhood experiences, not just my dad getting shot, but I had other traumatizing experiences, of course, as well. And so I got to a point in my young dance career where I gave up on myself, and I thought, if I can't do this professionally, then why am I going to keep trying? Because I felt almost embarrassed to be 18 years old and not dancing professionally, but still liking dance so much. So I pretty much just threw the towel in with dance at that time. And I had actually, when I was 17, started my first business. It was my first real endeavor as an entrepreneur, and I started a dance studio, and I was teaching dance to kids, and I absolutely loved it. And that's when I got to a point where I was like, okay, am I supposed to go to college? I don't know if I'm good enough to dance professionally. I honestly never really tried, to be honest. I never even tried, because that's how insecure I was. I didn't even go to auditions because I was just so scared. And so I decided to close that business that I had done with my best friend at the time and go to college and get a job. And I got a job at the gym. And that was where I got exposed to fitness. And I made friends with the trainers, and I started working out, and I found that flow state again of feeling good in my body the way that I had found it with dance. I started to run, I started to lift weights a little bit, and then eventually found myself competing in bodybuilding. And that was kind of where my Instagram journey began, because I started to share my progress, and I was just so excited to see my body change, and wow, look what I'm capable of, and my before and after. And as I started sharing that, I started to accumulate a following online. And I wasn't vegan at the time. I had never heard of the word vegan. So I was competing in bodybuilding for almost 2 years, literally never heard the word vegan. I would have not known what that meant. I knew what vegetarian meant. I was eating chicken and whey protein, and I was living the bro life, carrying around my gallon of water. And after my last competition, I got breast implants because I was told, and I believed it, that that was what I needed to be good enough for bodybuilding. And so there's that kind of inadequacy wound again, that feeling of not being good enough. The thing that allowed me to quit dance now came up and interfered with my bodybuilding. I didn't feel good enough. I got surgery. And as I was in the recovery of that surgery, I became so depressed because I realized that it still didn't make me feel good enough. I had placed second in my last competition. I was shredded. I had a 6-pack. Now I had boobs. And at the time, I had a job in marketing. I had left working at the gym to work a big girl job in marketing. And I didn't feel good about myself still. And I just became so depressed. And one day I reached out to a friend and I asked her for some support because she was a yoga teacher, and she recommended a book called A Path with Heart by Jack Kornfield. And that started my spiritual journey. And within a week or two of starting that, I started to just expand my self-awareness. And as I was starting to just pause and ask myself questions, why do I do that? Why do I feel this way about this thing? And I had a moment where I was cooking chicken for my meal prep, and I looked down at my dog, Cocoa Puff, so I have his name tattooed on my arm, and I realized, why am I eating chicken and loving a dog? This doesn't make any sense. And I just completely lost my appetite for meat. I did research. I came across all this evidence showing the agriculture industry effects on the world and how we could essentially end world hunger with all of the food that we are forcing livestock, that then we slaughter the livestock. And I thought, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. And I decided to go vegan that day. That was the first time I ever heard of the term. And I was still passionate about bodybuilding. And so the first thing I did was I went on the internet and I'm like, okay, I got to find some vegan bodybuilders to follow because surely they will know what to do, because I don't know what the frick to do. So I went on and I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't find anybody online, especially not a woman. I think the only person maybe I came across was like Frilly the Banana Girl, who was not a bodybuilder, and Robert Cheek, who was a man, not a woman. And so I thought, well, there's a gap here and I want to fill it, not because of any sort of opportunity to create a business. Creating a business wasn't really the thought at the time. It was, people need to see that you can be vegan and you can be fit, and I'm going to make sure that that's possible. So I worked my butt off to put content out there, to put on muscle and show that you can be strong on a vegan diet. And that was how I started to become known as the vegan fitness girl on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Then I got vegan tattooed on my butt. Partially,
like, definitely known as the vegan.
No, I'm really known as the vegan girl. And it was kind of a joke too. It was at a time when I showed a lot less ass on Instagram, so I didn't think that it was really ever going to be seen. I probably should have put it higher up. I mean, I guess at this point it wouldn't matter, but I probably should have put it higher up. I thought that it was always going to be hidden by shorts. And then one day I just said, fuck it. And I started posting more booty pictures because I was just really like loving my body and feeling confident. And then everyone was like, you're the girl with the vegan tattoo on your butt? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And that's how I started to become that person.
Yeah. And then that's where I come in.
And that's where you come in.
Yeah. So we started
following each other.
And then one of us slid in each other's DMs. We've shared this story a few different times, but and then we connected. And at that time I was also doing something similar. I was promoting and advocating for a vegan lifestyle and also trying to show what was possible with a vegan diet and competing. And you slid in my DMs and said, you like, I don't know, complimented me on something. I think it was like a picture that I posted, which I almost didn't post. And I remember the picture to this day. So I'm glad I posted it because that single post changed the trajectory of my life too. And once we started talking, we just never stopped. That was in 2017. And it was 3 months had gone by where we were FaceTiming. We were Snapchatting. We were any texting, any kind of communication. We were doing it, and then you came to California to visit, and then the next time you came, I believe I convinced you to
You should just
move.
move here, just
Yeah.
stay.
I was like, there's
I
not
was like,
much
all
for
right.
you in Tampa. I think that you reached your limit or your ceiling in Tampa, and you should come to LA.
Yeah, and then we became known as a vegan fitness couple, but
Yeah.
that was the first time that I I had boyfriends and dated prior to meeting you, of course, just like you have had partners before me. And when we started talking, that was the first time that I thought, I'm just going to be completely myself. I'm going to be really vulnerable, share parts about myself that were scary to share previously. Like one of the first times we talked, I told you I have to tell you that I'm bisexual. It doesn't change anything about me wanting to get to know you, but that's just part of my identity. And you were like, cool, great, okay. You didn't really care. And where in the past I have felt so judged for that, and I had kept that in the closet for so long, most of my life. And so starting out a relationship saying, okay, I'm just going to do my best to be as authentic as I can and share things and just be as vulnerable as I can right from the start really made our relationship special. And of course, we both were passionate about veganism, which is a huge part of our lives, caring about, you know, promoting a message of living as cruelty free as possible. And yeah, and then I moved to California, and that was in 2017. And that was not as smooth of a journey either, as some people might think. I think people can look at my story from the outside and say, oh, she started growing on Instagram, she moved to LA, and she manifested her dream life. And actually, yes, and my soul has always wanted to gain deep wisdom. And so by having that inside of me, I have manifested really hard experiences in my life, which have allowed me to become a really understanding and empathetic person. And when I moved to California, we didn't move in together right away. I had a roommate, and he was a really sweet guy named Travis. We lived together for about almost 2 months, and I came home one day and he had taken his life. And that was one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life. I found him with the dog walker because his dog walker had come home at the same time, and she immediately started asking me, where are the dog leashes? They're not here. And I thought, I don't know. Those are not my dogs. And we started looking for the dog leashes, and we found them, and he had hanged himself. And it was really, really traumatizing. And I went into a depressive episode then, and it was hard because I thought, I have this new boyfriend. I don't want to show my depression to him yet. I don't want him to think I'm crazy just yet. I'm trying to contain it. I just moved out here. I need to work my butt off to make it in LA. And now I'm depressed. And it was a really, really hard time. But going through that allowed me to have such a greater perspective on depression, on suicide prevention, on really checking in with people. A lot of times we think that people are doing okay, but we haven't really checked in on them. We haven't really said, no, okay, you say you're fine. How are you? Really? This is a safe place to share,
Mm.
you know?
Normally, you have to ask people twice. You have to say, "How are you?" Because the automatic response is, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good." But then you just ask them again. Say, "No, really, like,
No, really, how
how
are
are
you?
you?"
Yeah.
And give them a chance to really drop in and give you an honest answer. And that's something that isn't really relevant or prevalent in today's, kind of like very transactional interactions. So whenever we see friends, I mean, you and I have a wonderful community here in Venice, and we always seem to go deep, really deep and raw in our conversations. And I think that is what allows us to have such strong connections and deep understandings of each other. But you can't always know what's going on in somebody's head behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was passionate about mental health prior to that experience, I had talked about mental health here and there. I had struggled on and off with my mental health since I was a kid, based on all of the trauma that I had accumulated in my childhood. But after that, I became a lot more passionate about mental health and self-development and community and being there for people. And that really, that experience was hard. And I started making more content, talking about mental health, talking about compassion towards people in a different way. And that's just one of the many experiences that fueled all of the many things that I share online, from, self-expression. But that's, mental health is really dear to me because of that experience.
Yeah. And even before, like you mentioned before that, you were one of the first people that I had ever come across that spoke so honestly and authentically about your struggle with mental health. And I had never been exposed to somebody that had such a, I don't want to say an objective perspective of their own mental health, but an ability to talk about it objectively. And that destigmatized a lot of it for me, because growing up, I also grew up in a family where mental health was a relevant thing. And I've talked a little bit about my mom and her struggles with mental health, and how witnessing that kind of created this idea of what having mental health problems was. And for me, I did whatever I could to convince myself that I didn't have anything that was wrong with me or any kind of mental health issues. So I kind of like just refused to even look at it. And your introduction to me and the way you spoke about it allowed me to really look at what I had going on in a way that didn't feel shameful. It was more just like, hey, this is something that we all experience, and to different degrees. And it's important to talk about it. That way you can understand it and learn how to navigate it whenever it happens.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the better you can understand it, even if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily relate to people with depression or people with mental health disorders, the better you can understand it, the better you can show up for people or hold space for them and create a better world, essentially, because that's part of the biggest issue that we have in the world, is the lack of compassion from human to human. So I'm glad that I was able to
Yeah.
positively influence you to care more about mental health.
Yeah. You've influenced me in more ways than one, but that's definitely a big one, because I was in denial. Remember I used to say, like, I've never been depressed in my
I've
life.
never been depressed in my life.
Yeah.
I was like, he's either really special or he's lying.
And I was lying.
He was lying.
Because I just didn't know how to even be aware of what depression was, because I refused to ever even look at the symptoms and be like, no, that's not me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And going through all of that, from experiencing my own depressive episodes from, throughout my life, through childhood, through being a teenager, through being a young adult, then having such a in your face experience with another person's suicide was really, it really fueled my passion for self-development and for wanting to talk about things that are more meaningful than fitness. Not to say that am not still passionate about fitness and that it's not still a large part of my content and what I do and what I love to help people with, because it is. But that was where I started to, within my what I eat in a day vlogs and workout videos, I wanted to talk more. I wanted to share more. And I started to put all the pieces together of, okay, well, dance and creative outlets was really helpful for me, and going to therapy was really helpful for me, and coaching has been really helpful for me. And how can I share this with other people so that they can see that this can be helpful for them too, and less people can feel alone in the way that my roommate must have felt. And here we are in a podcast talking about it. So I hope that if people are listening to it, they know that you can seek help for when you're not feeling good. You can seek creative outlets. There's so many different options of things that you can do to lift your spirits up and find support.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And you've been such a shining example of that in your content or in your content. And I also want to talk about the kind of duality there, because you also post sexy content online, and immediately I've seen it since I've been with you, and even before I've been with you, you can read comments and just, see what people say about you. People think that there's not another person behind the screen reading these messages or reading these comments. Like, people like to leave comments like we're like it's like a Yelp review, like we're not going to read it. Like, they say mean things,
Yeah,
and
they objectify you. They
yeah, they objectify you, they judge you, they misunderstand you, and I think that you are misunderstood to a lot of people. And the way in which you share content is so unique, but also so empowering and so cool, to me at least. I think it's really awesome how you can be a fitness coach. You can also be a sexy content creator that posts more provocative images. And then in the captions, you can talk about how you can just feel the depth and the wisdom that you have to share and to offer. So it's like you have so many different forms of expression, and you're not pigeonholed into one identity. And that's something that I really respect and admire about you. And I would love to hear your just how you can do all of those different things at once.
Yeah, I mean, I am Mrs. Understood. Like, I'm so misunderstood. I've felt misunderstood for so much of my life, being a middle child. One, I know anybody who's a middle child can relate to feeling misunderstood. But I felt misunderstood. Then I was a theater kid. I was the artsy theater kid at school. I've always been in, and now I'm then I became vegan, and everyone around me who wasn't vegan was like, she's a crazy hippie. And then I started posting sexy content while wanting to have conversations about mental health and self-expression and self-love. And people thought, you can't do both. So I'm so used to being misunderstood that I now understand that being misunderstood is not the end all. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. It just simply means that there are certain people that are not at a point in their journey where they can perceive your message or come to the understanding that humans are all multifaceted beings. All of us, not just men, not just women, we all are multifaceted, in the same way that you can be a nurturing mom and a boss bitch and a sexy lover for your partner all in one, and an artist, and whatever else your soul calls to. So for me, that journey has been, like I mentioned, realizing how important the arts and being creative and self-expression was for me at a young age. That's always come back to me in the forms of making content. And for me, doing photo shoots was part of that creative. It was where the creative outlet met the self-love journey, because I just started to feel so good about myself after struggling with my self-image for so long that I really wanted to create art with it. And that's what photography is. It's art. And a lot of it was sexy, and that happens to be what a lot of people like to see on Instagram. And of course, the intention behind sexy content is different for every content creator. I'm not speaking for all sexy content creators, but for me, it's an expression of my love for myself, my love for women's bodies, and a way to be creative, and also just really owning that multifaceted nature, because I don't like to be pigeonholed, like you said, or boxed in. I want to continue to show that you can be multifaceted, because when we start to box ourselves in is often when we start to feel that parts of ourselves are being suppressed. And when we feel like parts of ourselves are being suppressed, we start to get depressed. Suppression leads to depression. When we really want to be an artist, but we force ourselves to be a software engineer, even though that's not fully what we're passionate about, we start to feel like we're dying inside. We feel like we're slowly dying inside. So it's okay to nurture all of the different facets of yourself and share that with the world if that's what you want. That's what I decided to do. I decided to share it online through what I say, what I post. And I also have the understanding that a lot of people are going to, have trouble understanding that because of where they're at in their journey, because of their own resistance to accept their multifaceted nature. And so they see what I'm doing and they reject it, or maybe the facet of me that's showing, let's just use that sexy archetype, that sexy, like boss babe, wild woman archetype that comes out when I'm doing photos or when I'm pole dancing or twerking. The people that love to leave mean comments and slut shame that content are people who are struggling to meet that archetype within themselves. They don't feel sexy. They don't feel like they can have that connection to the feminine or to their own sacral energy, and so they reject it. And that's okay if that's where they're at. I don't care. I really don't. I send them love, and I hope that they do find it someday. So it's definitely been an interesting journey in receiving that type of feedback. There's definitely way more love than hate. There's so much more people that see that and they're like, yes, that inspires me to activate that in myself. I want to share my art and my poetry and my dancing and my podcast and my cooking and my workout evolution. And that's what I do it for. I do it for those people. Like, those are my people, not the people who see something and they
love
just
to hate. Yeah.
who love to hate. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not, they're not my people. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think that brings up such a great point, because nobody great is ever universally liked. Like, they're oftentimes very misunderstood. Most of the times they're divisive. I mean, you either love them or you hate them, but you can't ignore them, right? And I think that's something about you, a quality that you have, regardless of what people's opinions are about you and how misunderstood they may be about you, or how much they may misunderstand you. You know, you're doing something and you always keep putting out this awesome art and expression, and it's inspiring in so many ways. And I know I've just, because I've been living in such close proximity to you
Yeah.
for so many years, to see how many women and men you've inspired to talk about sexuality, you know, how many messages you've gotten about that once you publicly announced that you were out of the closet, or you know, on social media, where you already had hundreds of thousands of followers, which is something that can feel like telling it to the entire world.
Yeah, well, and also when I came out of the closet on social media as bisexual, I hadn't had that conversation with my family because there was never a reason to, and also fear around their own judgment and rejection. So me coming out of the closet to social media was also me coming out of the closet to my family, because they watched my content. And I remember seeing my mom and my sister see my Instagram story that day when I was like, proud to be bi, and
Yeah.
and I was like, oh God, what, I was sweating. Like, I was like, what are they thinking? And they, you know, they had a good response and they accepted me. But yeah, I do love to just activate people's love for themselves and excitement to be their most authentic self. That's my jam. That's what I'm here to do. It's part of my work here in this human life, is to be myself and inspire other people to be themselves and accept their sexuality, accept their multifaceted nature, to work on themselves, to heal themselves in the best way that they can from their trauma, and know that just because these really hard life experiences happen to you doesn't mean that they define you, and that you can come out the other side stronger and with more wisdom, and take that and create something that can help other people. And we create this domino effect of inspiring people, and that's my shit. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. And what a gift to have accumulated such a platform where you can reach so many people, because I not only just witnessing, but also partaking in it myself, of really getting to know myself, nurturing my own gifts, expressing myself in ways that I was always too ashamed of or afraid of being judged for. And I've found that is my superpower. Now that the more I lean into that, the more responses, positive responses I get from people in a way that is inspiring, that gives them permission to see somebody like me do it. They feel inspired to do the same thing. And luckily, we've been able to, you know, grow our social media to what it is through originally talking about primarily fitness and some elements of spirituality and health and veganism and all of these things. And now we've both kind of evolved into more self-expression. We talk about healing. Last year, no, 2 years ago now, it's 2022. Almost 2 years ago now, you and I had started to break up. And before that, we were this like very imperfect, perfect couple on social media where people love to reference us as this
Couple
ideal couple
goals.
goals. Yeah. And
Yeah.
not only does that
I'd
create a
be
distorted
sweating like,
image,
what?
we're both like, we're not perfect. Trust me, don't pedestalize us,
Delete that.
please. And we had to go through our own, journey of breaking up publicly and then having to go do this inner work separately. Part of it we did together and then get back together 9 months later and share and even share that with people.
And that was scary to share too. That was so scary to share for both of us in different ways, to share on your podcast why we broke up. And we talked about having that conversation on the podcast for months. And it was just, we weren't ready. You weren't ready. There was so much, fear around it because, of course, when you want to share your life, when you want to share whatever is your authentic truth online, of course you fear judgment. And the judgment comes. That's the thing, is you fear the judgment and you're gonna be
judged for it
and
anyway.
you're gonna be judged for it anyways. But when you get through that and you overcome that fear of judgment and you realize that the love always outweighs the hate, and that the people that you can inspire and activate and help by being your authentic self, that is so worth the fear that you experience and a couple mean comments or DMs. It's so worth it. And so I love that we both get to do it because we get to constantly help each other as well, because I have moments where there's something new I want to share and I start to get scared and think, oh no, judgment, and I can talk about it with you and we can reflect. And then same for you, when you have something new that you want to start sharing, you talk about it with me. I can help you overcome that. And it's great when you have two coaches living together. We just constantly coach each other.
I know. Sometimes you got to be careful because it's like,
sometimes it's like, don't coach me right now.
You just want somebody to hold space for you. And then I immediately always go into coach mode and fix mode and that logical side of myself. And then you're sometimes just like, look, dude, I just want you to just listen.
Just listen.
Just listen. Don't say anything. Don't give your opinion. Just listen.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've also learned from our relationship, is how to hold space, how to be more empathetic with the person that you're talking to. Try not to understand their experience as how it relates to me, but just understand their experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of times when people are sharing something hard or emotional, they just want you to say, that must have been really hard. They just want the validation and to know that they're loved and supported, because when they were a kid, they didn't receive that. A lot of us didn't. And I have loving parents, but my whole family went through a lot of crap, like I shared. And so there were a lot of moments where I needed my parents to say, it's okay. I hear you. I feel your pain. Your pain is valid. And they weren't able to be there for me. And so just like any other human, as an adult, when I'm hurting, I crave that thing. And so it's great that we can continue to support each other in that way by showing up for each other in that way. And that's how relationships can be really healing, when you have a background of childhood trauma, which we both do.
Coming at you. We have no shortage of that. But yeah, I think that's probably what, attracted us to each other on some, if you're taking a zoom out and looking at things from the law of attraction, we did meet each other at that vibration of our unhealed, or at least I'm not saying that we're fully healed now, but I'm saying that like we were very much meeting each other at that unhealed frequency. And we both had a lot of things that we didn't work through yet and didn't know how, didn't have the skills, didn't even have the awareness of. And through the container of this relationship and with the help and support of other people, therapists, and our own self-reflection and inner work, we've been able to at least develop the awareness and work through a lot of those childhood wounds that manifest in ways in our relationship that sometimes we have to take a step back and be like, oh, okay, this is a conditioned response to something that I experienced when I was a kid, and now we're reliving it, and it's not necessarily an issue between us. It's something that goes beyond even when we first met. And I think that that's beautiful that we can work those things out together and stay in it together, even though it's fucking hard. It's fucking really hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And like you said, when we met, we were drawn to each other for so many reasons. On paper, we were very compatible, vegan, likes fitness, attracted to each other, whatever. But there was also another reason we were attracted to each other, was because we were both at this point of on our healing journey, which was having a lot of stuff to resolve, but also both really craving to be beyond that. And us craving to be beyond that is what allowed us to find each other, because I had a lot of relationships that were not a great container for healing, because the other person didn't want to do that. They didn't want to put in the work. And so us finding each other has been great, because we've been able to do that together, because we both commit to doing the work for ourselves and within the relationship as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about any of that? Let's say, because I mean, I think it's such a pivotal point in both of our lives and our own personal growth and development, where we split up, and we already recorded an episode on my podcast where we talk a little bit more in detail about our split and everything, but we don't have to get into it directly. But I think that, that was one of the most challenging points of both of our lives, dealing with heartbreak on that level. And we also had to deconstruct our very intertwined lives together. We had businesses together, we lived together, we did everything together. We were combined or conjoined at the hips.
Yeah.
And then we had an explosion and everything was falling apart. But on the other side of that, you gave birth to a whole business. You had this newfound sense of self, and it's just so much growth. So do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, 2020 was one of the hardest years of my life for sure. I think a lot of people relate to that as well. And when we broke up, it was so painful, because not only does it hurt to go through a breakup and experience the pain that comes with lying and trust being broken, but also because we both have come from so much trauma in our family. When we found each other, we became each other's family, and we lived together and did everything together for 3.5 years. And so, both of our family lives out of state as well. And so when we broke up, it was this feeling of feeling so alone, because in the past, when I was younger, if I went through a breakup, I'd just be crying at my mom's house on her couch. And now I couldn't do that. I was really alone, and I was so scared. And it was one of the best things that happened to me, because I became that independent boss bitch that I really wanted to be, and I was not allowing myself to be, as long as we were in a really codependent relationship that was built on lack of trust. And so when we broke up, that was my first time living living on my own. That was my first time living on my own. That was my first time just really starting to prioritize myself and ask myself, what do I want to do today? Who do I want to be? And what does that require? And what do I want to manifest in my life? And that was such a emotional time for me. And I started the Embodied Babe, which is my coaching community, because we had started vegan fitness together, and I loved doing it, and I loved fitness, and I love veganism, but I needed something of my own as well to spend more time on, rather than we needed to spend more time apart, because we had broken up. And I thought, this is the time for me to start doing all of that stuff that I love, the self-development, the spirituality, and making a space for women, because I love connecting with women, and I love helping and coaching women. And so I started the Embodied Babe. I was on such a great routine. I was waking up every day, would not miss a day of my meditation, my journaling practice, and really just putting myself first for the first time in my life. And a lot of people ask me, I get this question all the time when I do Q&As, is I just went through like a hard breakup of 5 years. I don't know what to do. Like, how do I survive? How do I get over this? And my biggest piece of advice is, and I know it may sound a little cliche, is really put yourself first. For the first time in your life, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, who do I want to be today? What does that person do? They meditate, they journal, they eat a healthy breakfast, they go work out. Because so many of us, when we've been in long-term relationships that have become codependent, we lose our identity and we start always thinking of the other person first, which comes from a really loving place, but it can create a loss of identity. So instead of thinking, well, okay, what do you want to eat for dinner, babe? It's, what do I want for dinner today? I'm going to make myself tacos. I'm going to order in from my favorite restaurant. I'm going to go sit at my favorite restaurant by myself, dressed up for myself. And I would buy myself fresh flowers every time I went to the store. And I just really started to really enjoy like all of my alone time, which I never had before. And my self-love just exploded. Like, I just
date yourself, essentially.
Date yourself.
Yeah.
Date yourself for a little while. And I honestly loved it. And I started to really thrive. And I remember just having moments where I would be journaling and I would just stop and break down crying with gratitude because I was so proud of myself for having gone through all of the pain that I've been through in my life and the pain of our breakup and feeling so scared of being alone in a place where my family lives across the country, and actually making it happen and creating a little sanctuary and creating a routine that I was sticking to and being healthy and feeding myself well and working on my business and seeing the things on my vision board manifest into reality. And that's my biggest piece of advice for people that are going through a breakup is date yourself, put yourself first, really truly put yourself first, and start to just revel in that alone time. It feels uncomfortable at first, but it starts to feel good once you tap into the self-love.
Yeah, it's definitely unfamiliar territory whenever you start doing that. It can feel very selfish. And I think in that time after a breakup, you just have to be selfish. You have to really serve yourself first and foremost. Like you said, you constantly do it for other people, comes from a great place, but you're doing a disservice to yourself. So first serve yourself and act in a way that you're not going to judge yourself for. If it's coming from an authentic place, act on it and see where that leads and see where it takes you. I remember whenever we split up, that was hard for me too, because I didn't know how to do that. I was also very much involved with how are you doing today and what did you want to do? And it felt very unnatural and just selfish.
And you were a serial monogamer before. I don't know if that's the right term. Serial monogamous dater.
Yeah.
Before me, you lived with a girlfriend for a while. Before her, you had a girlfriend for a while. Yeah. So you were always in long-term relationships. And so when you finally are on your own, it's like, whoa, what do I do with myself?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that came from a place of like codependence too.
Yeah.
It wasn't because, I mean, it definitely was because I love relationships, or I commonly found myself in them, but also because it was really hard for me to be alone and really sit with myself and do things on my own. And like you said, date myself. But ultimately it was the best thing that could have happened for us, because whenever we did reconnect months later, we reconnected as two higher vibrational beings that were seeking the same thing and wanting that partnership with someone that we could trust and speak honestly with and authentically with, and not have to hold back out of fear of, will I upset this person? Will this person leave me? We were both very secure with who we were and what we wanted. And that allowed us to come back together in union and have a deeper, more rich relationship, including all of the things that happened in the past, and having a better understanding that, on the other side of these difficult circumstances are gifts that you can take with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, our breakup was a huge, if I had a visual timeline of my life, of like crazy events in my life, of like my dad getting shot, like all these like crazy things that have happened to me. Like that was like a huge one for me. And I'm sure that almost everybody has experienced like that one like, really deep, meaningful breakup. But on the other side of it is finding yourself and finding your voice and being there for yourself for the first time. And there were even times when I'd be laying in bed like sobbing, just like so sad and feeling so alone. And I knew I could text my friends. My best friend lived across the street at the time. And I knew I could call or text my best friends and they would answer. And I would just say, no, I'm going to be here for myself for the first time. Like I'm going to feel the pain and I'm going to self-soothe. And I really, really learned how to self-soothe at that time as an adult. And that was so important for me.
Mm-hmm. So what's next for you? I know that we've covered a lot in this conversation. Is there anything that you want to talk about or direction that you want to take in the rest of this conversation? I'm curious.
Well, what's next for me is I have been experiencing my own kind of personal shift super recently with having an explant. I feel like for me, removing my breast implants was me closing the door on a chapter of myself and opening up a new door. And I was really excited for it leading up to the surgery and during my surgery recovery. And now that I'm beyond the recovery point and I'm back to making content and being out there in the world, I'm like, oh, this new chapter is actually kind of scary for me. It's me. Yes, I am still that Instagram model. I have sexy content and I'm doing all this other stuff. Like, yes, and I'm also coaching. I'm coaching people on manifestation so that they can deepen their understanding of manifestation and really start to create the lives of their dreams. I'm coaching women on confidence. I'm planning on writing a book. I'm doing this podcast again. I'm doing more than just leaning on like this, like the
safe,
yeah, because even though, of course, breaking out on the internet as a fitness influencer and as an Instagram model or like a whatever internet baddie, it's not easy. That it takes a lot of work. It took me a lot of work. I mean, you saw it. That took a lot of work, and now it's become my safety point. It's easy for me. I know how to do it, and my soul constantly yearns for more challenges, and the challenges are constantly leading me towards my life's work. And so part of that for me right now was I had to get my implants removed. They were not doing a service to they were doing me a major disservice. I had to remove them because I had to feel at home in my body to be able to go into this next chapter of using my voice more. And even though I've talked about mental health and self-expression and creativity and all of that over the years, it's like now I need to talk about that even more. And I want to talk about my spiritual path and my relationship with spirituality because it's a huge part of my life. And I've been in the spiritual closet, so to speak, on the internet because I talk about my spirituality here and there, but I don't talk about it to the depth that people who know me in real life know that it is a part of me. And so that's what's next for me is sharing all of that and using this podcast to do that and YouTube and through, writing a book and doing all kinds of new things. And I'll still be doing fitness, of course, because I'm a gym rat and I want to show people that vegans can and always will kick ass. So that's always going to be there. But I'm doing all of this new stuff now and it's exciting and it's also a little scary.
As it should be.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary to pivot. You pivoted from being an engineer, which was safe, into being the vegan fitness man online. and I pivoted from being a little bodybuilder chick to being the vegan fitness chick / mental health advocate / Instagram girl to now I'm just doing another pivot, or rather showing another facet of myself, like in with all of that as well. And that's this spiritual, self-loving side.
I love it. I love to see it. I love to witness it. I love to be a part of it. And I just want to go back to the explant for a little bit because I can't believe I forgot about it. We talked about so many things up until this
I
point,
had
but
so many events in my
I
life.
know,
It's so
I
hard
know.
to
It's
fit it
hard
all
to
in a
pick one.
podcast.
But I really, and I'm speaking from my experience with knowing you since we first met, seeing your entire evolution, and then seeing you, I mean, like I mentioned, especially after the breakup, really come home to yourself in a way that you love yourself, you have more conviction with your own identity and who you are, and seek out less validation from other people because you validate and soothe yourself. And I think that you coming to a place where you're finally making such a big decision to remove your breast implants is it's so inspiring because I can only imagine, I know how much courage that takes because not only is your body associated with your income and what you do for a living, whether it's fitness or sexy content or posting on Instagram, like all of that requires you to show up in a certain way. So to remove your implants and be put under the knife, have a extensive recovery, have to surrender into letting me take care of you,
That was
like
scary.
yeah, all of these things require so much courage, but you did it. And I think that this is going to open up the door and the conversation for a lot of other women that might have made a decision that reflected who they were years ago, but they've evolved and they also have come to a deeper understanding of themselves and realized that maybe these implants are not who I really am or who I want to continue to show up as.
Yeah, and like I said, I mentioned it's scary to pivot, but it's okay to do so, and that also means in things that are in relation to your physical body as well, because at a point in time, I mentioned it earlier in the episode, I said that I got the implants from a place of feeling not enough.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like, even though I was doing okay in bodybuilding, I didn't feel like I was good enough for it. I didn't feel like I was pretty enough. I thought that I could keep competing and go pro and go to Olympia and all that stuff that every bodybuilder dreams of. And I thought that I would only accomplish those things if I had implants. I had honestly never really thought about implants before that. I wasn't interested in them. I was just not somebody who ever thought about it. And when I got them, it was from this place of not enoughness. And I realized instantly when I woke up from surgery that nothing about my self-worth had changed. And I instantly started bawling when I woke up from my breast augmentation surgery. And that version of myself doesn't exist anymore. The version of myself that I am now is so confident in her self-worth after everything that I've been through and all of the work that I've done on myself and learning to have compassion for myself and heal myself, that my implants were not aligned with who I am now. So they had to go. It was a huge spiritual decision for me because yes, they were impacting my breathing. They started to feel uncomfortable. I have such body awareness that I could feel them and it felt uncomfortable and I didn't want them there. Yes to all of those things. I wanted to feel physically better. But the biggest thing for me was for me to take ownership and say, this is not aligned with who I am anymore. To me, those implants, my relationship with my own breast implants, they were a representation of a girl who doesn't feel like she's enough or she's pretty enough. And I'm not that person anymore, so I don't need them. And the scary part in doing that is that I can never just go back and undo it. I can't just control alt delete implants. I had to have surgery, which surgery costs money. It's painful. You have to recover. There's scarring now in my body that I didn't have before. And like you said, much of my income is related to my body through fitness, through sexy content, through posting on Instagram. And now my body looks different and it's not who everybody that was following me saw before. It's a new version of myself. And it was scary. And I definitely wrestled with the decision for about 2 years, which you know, because you heard me constantly contemplating it and going back and forth about it. And the decision all started when we did our first plant medicine ceremony together in the beginning of 2019. And I had a realization that my implants were not for me anymore and I wanted them out. And that's when I started looking into it. But I was too scared at the time. I wasn't ready. I just was not emotionally as resilient as I am now. And so then a time came this year. When I started this year, I didn't know I was going to be having this surgery. And a time came this year over the summer where we were in another type of ceremony setting and it came up again and I could not deny it this time. And I thought, I can't go online and tell people to be their most authentic selves and to speak from their heart and be truthful and express themselves and love their body if I am leaning on this crutch that I don't even need anymore. So that was me removing the crutch. And I feel so much better being on the other side of that journey. And I had the most amazing doctor ever. I went to Dr. Ritu Chopra in Beverly Hills, and he made me feel so safe in the process and gave me such amazing results. I'm so happy. I actually am happy with my chest more now than I was before. So I'm really happy that I did this. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing to share it and inspire other women to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been like absolutely inspiring to watch you go through that whole process and really embrace yourself before you even made the decision to remove them, but also throughout the process of having to accept that you're going to have these scars. And like, I get it. Like, I also very
Yeah,
concerned
you
with
care
how
about
my
your body.
body looks
Everybody
and the
cares about their
aesthetics
body.
of
Yeah.
it and having new scars in places that weren't there before. But this is a bit personal, but I don't care. I'm going to share it anyway. The other day we were in our room and you were in the bathroom and you were walking around topless and I saw you just glowing, like you were absolutely glowing, just standing there. And you you looked at me and you're like, why are you smiling right now? Like, I think you were talking to me. You were saying
I was
something.
telling a story.
And I was just too blown away with how much you were radiating. And I was looking at your scars and I was thinking to myself, like, not 1 ounce of me thought that they were not beautiful. Like, I saw those scars as a representation of how strong and courageous you are. And now you have like this like new tattoo to carry with you, to share a new story of who you are and who you were. And I just want to say that it's super inspiring. So I love you, babe. I love you too. But yeah, so I just want to tell you that I find you inspiring and just you call me forward every single day just by witnessing all the things that you're doing and how you work on yourself and how you show up for your clients and how you show up online. So you call me forward to be a better man and to work on myself. So I really appreciate you for that and just want to confess my love for you on your show while I have the mic.
Thank you. Love you. And that's what my mission is to just continue to call people forward to be themselves and to own who they are and to come out the other side of the hard stuff wiser and stronger and more excited for life. I am so much more confident in my body now after my explant, which I was so scared that I was going to feel insecure or not know how to dress my body now that my chest size was different. And I don't feel any of that at all. I actually feel the opposite and it has nothing to do with my bra size. It has everything to do with feeling more like myself, feeling fully aligned with my body and my decisions and feeling proud of those decisions. And that allows me to feel really confident in who I am. So I'm excited to continue sharing that and having conversations like this here.
Well, I hope you have me on again because I feel like we can talk a lot about
We can talk all day.
a lot of things. I don't even know how long this conversation's been, but thank you for having me on and giving me the honor of interviewing you on your very first episode. I'm really excited to see what other guests you have on. I know there's one waiting right now, and to see what direction you take this new show and this new podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in and giving me your ears for this time. I hope that you continue to come back. If this podcast made you feel warm and fuzzy inside or has something exciting that you want to share with others, please do share on social media. I appreciate the love and support so much. And make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. And until next time, I'm sending you so much love and light. Peace.